Now, to conclude this module, we'll have our second lecture, which you should not skip. The first one was the refs lecture. Now we're going to talk about the Vue instance lifecycle, which is also important. We learned how Vue works under the hood, we learned about the virtual DOM, and that there are various steps for bringing something onto the screen. Sometimes you need to run code during those steps. And that's why Vue has a quite elaborate lifecycle where you can step in at any time to execute code you need to execute. And you will see some of those lifecycle hooks we're going to discuss now in action throughout this course, by the way. It all starts with us creating a new app and, of course, mounting it with the mount method to the HTML code, to the DOM, so that Vue knows where to render the app. Then, when it starts creating the app and starts bringing something onto the screen, it reaches a couple of points, a couple of lifecycle phases, which are also reflected in methods you can add to your Vue app configuration object to run code you might need to run at this point of time. For example, the first lifecycle phase, the first so-called lifecycle hook that is reached, is the before create phase. It's followed by a created phase. The difference is that before create is basically called before the app has been fully initialized, whereas created is called thereafter. At this point of time, we still have nothing on the screen though. After created, Vue just knows its data properties and it's aware of the general app configuration. But now is the time where the template is compiled. So where all the dynamic placeholders, all the interpolations and so on are removed and replaced with the concrete values that should be shown to the user. Thereafter, the before mount hook is reached. Before mount means that this is right before Vue is actually going to bring something to the screen. So right before we can see something on the screen. So now after created and before mount, we reach mounted. So that in the end just means that now we see something on the screen. Now the Vue app was initialized, the template was compiled, Vue knows what to show on the screen, and it handed those instructions off to the browser so that the browser really adds all the HTML elements with all the content we need as defined by our Vue app. So now we have our mounted Vue app, our mounted Vue instance. Now, of course, in most Vue apps, data changes at some point of time, and that then triggers a new lifecycle. Now we reach the before update hook and thereafter the updated hook. This is a bit like before create and created. Before update is reached before the update has been fully processed internally by Vue in its app. Updated is reached once that has been processed. This, by the way, also means that at this point of time, the update is visible on the screen. So we don't reach mounted again because the template was never unmounted. So it always was visible. After updated, the changes just have been processed and have been rendered to the screen, whereas in before update, they haven't. Now, sometimes an instance can also be unmounted. A Vue app can be unmounted. We haven't had this scenario yet. It will become more important later, as you will see, but I can also show you how we could unmount an app in the next lecture. When an app is unmounted, all its content is removed from the screen and the app is dead. And we have two lifecycle hooks here as well. Before unmount, which runs right before it's about to be removed, and unmounted, which runs after it has been removed. You can, for example, use these hooks to execute any cleanup code you might want to do, send a HTTP request to your server to keep track of that app being unmounted, or whatever you need to do. Now let's see all those hooks in action to make it a bit clearer how they work.